All right, let's take a look at this week's health assignment, which is dealing with defending skills and also talking a little bit about substance abuse. So let's start with question number one, which is going to be a question that you're going to answer it's an open-ended question. So you really can't get it wrong, but it's an opportunity for you to think about a time in your life where you had to sort of say no to something. So let's talk about this. So it's just think about how you handle situations in which you are asked to do something that you know is harmful or wrong. And these circumstances, you need to use refusal skills. These are communication strategies that can help you to say no when you are urged to take part in behaviors that are unsafe or unhelpful, or that go against your values. In the space below, please write or tell me about a time where you had to say no to something that was unsafe or harmful. What strategies from the image did you use? Or, even if it's not in the image below, talking about explaining why or suggesting alternatives or using your body language or leaving, walking away, using a firm tone of voice. If you had a different strategy that isn't pictured here, that's all right too. But tell me about what you did and how it worked, or if it worked. And if it didn't go well, what could you do next time that you're in a similar situation? Maybe you gave in. Maybe you participated in this activity and after the fact you kind of said, man, I wish I didn't make that decision. We all have regrets, and that's okay. The good news is that those can be learning experiences as long as we sit and we reflect and we think about how we could have done it differently or better. Okay, so write in the space below, briefly, a very small, short paragraph, few sentences about what strategies did you use to refuse the situation and maybe what you would do differently next time. Moving on to number 2. What are the advantages of peacefully resolving conflicts? Nobody gets physically or emotionally hurt. You are not in trouble. The relationship can be maintained or strengthened. Definitely, these are all great outcomes of having a conflict that we can resolve peacefully. Number 3. Which of the following are reliable sources of trustworthy information that will help you be better prepared to make healthful choices? Library resources like science, medicine, nutrition, and fitness sources written by credible authors. Yeah, that sounds right. Reliable internet sites like those posted by government and educational institutions. So .org or .edu is typically the way that those websites would end. Articles published by health professionals or experts. Healthcare providers like doctors and health organizations. So the answer to that would be those are all really reliable sources of trustworthy information. Number 4, what is a decision you've made that turned out great? And what is a decision that you made that didn't go so well? When looking at the image, what is one technique that you think would be useful for making a future decision? Okay, so here below, it gives you a real quick summary of what this very short image is showing you about decision making. So listing the options is one choice, weighing the possible outcomes, before they happen. Consider your values and evaluate the decision before you make it. So I'm going to give you an example very quickly. When I was a middle school kid, my 8th grade year at JFK, I was on a basketball team in the CYO League, the church league for Holy Family Church. That might be some of your churches. Well, I played for the basketball team at that time when they used to have a church league. And but JFK had a basketball team that a lot of us were interested in playing for. And so you couldn't play on both teams. So the coach of my current team, a Holy Family, said, if you're going to try out for that team, you can't be a part of this team. So you have to decide it's going to be this team or you go try out for that other team. And he goes, if you try out for JFK and you get caught, you can't come back. So you got to decide ahead of time. So I remember sitting on my couch with one of my best friends who was also on the team, and we were sort of trying to decide whether or not we were going to try out for JFK and risk not having any team or stay where we were and, get a lot of playing time and have fun in the church. It was a good league, a lot of good players. But, when you're a kid and you go to JFK, you want to play for the JFK team. So we actually made a chart. We wrote it down on paper. We had pros and cons, pros on the left and cons on the right. And we listed, a little bit for each one. And we weighed the possible outcomes, if we make JFK, it'll be glory. But if we don't, we're going to sit around without a team. We considered our values, what do we think was important? As 7th graders, we played at Holy Family. We didn't even try out for JFK. We just didn't think we'd make it as 7th graders. It's really hard to make it. but we really wanted JFK really badly. And then, we sort of evaluated the decision beforehand. And so long story short, the story goes that we tried out for the team. We decided to leave Holy Family, try out for JFK. And my best friend made the team, and I was one of the final cuts. It was actually the only time in my sports career where I didn't make a team. And I didn't get to play that season. And looking back on it, I still feel like I made the right choice. It was disappointing to not make the team, but it was something I wanted really, really badly, and I was willing to go for it. And the consequence was I didn't get to play on a team, but I still feel like it was the right choice. And it's one of the few times in my life where I actually sit, as a kid at least, and I sat down and I really weighed the pros and cons and potential benefits and consequences. So anyway, think about a time in your life where you had to make a decision. Maybe it's you're not into sports, but it might have been something a little bit more health oriented or life oriented or whatever. And did you go through this list and really think it out before you made your choice? Because this is really something that we want you guys doing, is really thinking ahead of time and not acting impulsively, which is where we do something kind of quick, maybe out of anger or out of impulse. A lot of times we do this with food or with spending or even with trying a drug or drinking alcohol. And these are not choices that need to be made quickly. They're choices that we need to sit and think about. All right, let's move forward. Number 5, the type of alcohol and alcoholic beverage, that is ethanol. Ethanol is the actual alcohol that is produced when alcohol is made in beer, wine, and in hard liquor. Number 6, the process by which the body breaks down substances. That word is your metabolism, all right? So your body metabolizes the food that you eat, but it also metabolizes certain drugs or alcohol that you put into your system as well. And that process of metabolizing these drugs and alcohol is actually toxic for your body. And some drugs, the toxicity is so strong it can kill you right there in the moment. Whereas with something like alcohol, typically the metabolic process takes years or even decades to do significant damage. But lo and behold, eventually it will happen, that process of breaking down that substance. Number 7, a person who is intoxicated under the influence of alcohol or drugs is less likely to engage in high-risk behavior. Of course, by data, we know that to be false. So number 7 is false. When people drink or use drugs, it lowers inhibition, which is this little voice in our brain that keeps us from making dangerous or poor choices. And when those voices are lowered, we typically take more risks. Number 8, alcohol acts as a depressant and shuts down involuntary actions such as breathing and the gag reflex that prevents choking. That answer is true, and actually that little part about the gag reflex is very important to note, because when we're under a high level of alcohol intoxication and we might vomit, well, we need a gag reflex to sort of keep us alive. And actually when people die from alcohol use or an overdose, it can be from having too much alcohol in their bloodstream, but a lot of times it can be from choking on their own vomit, which I know is really grotesque kind of thought and so on, but it does happen, and it's part of that reason is that gag reflex goes away, and that person is unconscious, and then it gets in their airway, and their airway is restricted, and they can't breathe. Number 9, a person may be injected with a vaccine to prevent him or her from getting a particular disease, and that answer is true. And I know that's a random question to put in a substance abuse assignment, but it's something important for us to be thinking about and hearing about in this current state of our lives with coronavirus and COVID-19 and the vaccine being out there, and a lot of misinformation about vaccines and their usefulness and whether or not they work, or whether or not, it's the government implanting 5G in your system, and all these other sorts of things that you may be hearing from people around you, or from a news network or an internet website or something of this nature. And I think it's important to understand that vaccines have been around for a very long time, and that they've been a critical part in defending against and defeating very dangerous diseases, many of which are now gone and have been eradicated from mankind as a result of the fact of science, experiments, doctors, nurses, researchers, chemists, creating these products to help save lives. And so that is the answer to number 9. It is true. Vaccines help prevent people from getting particular diseases. Number 10, a strong, sometimes fatal reaction to taking a large amount of a drug is known as an overdose. Number 11, a thick, sticky, dark fluid produced when tobacco burns creates a very dangerous substance called tar. Tar has over 4,000 chemicals in it and over 43 known carcinogens, which are cancer-causing substances. So that's why smoking and even vaping also has carcinogens. Now, it's not tar-based like the product of combusting tobacco, but it is a carcinogen. So vape is also something that you want to avoid. It can be very dangerous for your lungs. Number 12, environmental smoke is also known as side stream smoke. This is true, and this used to be a much more pressing issue with people, and it still may be, even in your own homes. Well, it's very illegal now to smoke just about anywhere publicly, whether it's a mall, a restaurant, a business, a grocery store, and so on. And, interestingly enough, within my lifetime easily, when I was a kid, you could smoke just about anywhere. But now we know that environmental smoke, which is that smoke that comes out of a person's mouth or comes off their cigarette they're smoking, is very toxic. And, the sad part is that's involuntary smoke. In other words, if you're near this, you have to breathe it in. I mean, there's just, you can't stop it from happening. And that's why if you've got somebody in your family that smokes, hopefully you guys have an agreement where that person smokes their cigarettes, in a highly ventilated area, or they smoke outdoors. And I know that can be really inconvenient in a rainstorm or in the winter months, but it really only seems fair to children or to people who do not decide to smoke, so that they're not exposed to these dangerous fumes. Number 13, babies born with fetal alcohol syndrome may have deformities, heart defects, and other developmental setbacks, and that is true. And sadly, fetal alcohol syndrome is 100% preventable. That means it's not even a disorder that would exist as long as pregnant mothers would avoid the use of any amount of alcohol. Okay? Number 14, because THC, a chemical found in marijuana, is stored in body fat, a person can fail a drug test weeks after using the drug. And that answer is true. Now, something to consider, and when you click true on the assignment, it's going to, I kind of typed in a little bit more information to extend upon the learning here. But what it says when you click true is that now marijuana as a substance is becoming more and more decriminalized. That means the criminal penalties and laws are much lighter for possession or use. In other words, it's not mandatory minimum jail sentences. It's not going on probation and having a permanent record. It's more like getting a speeding fine. And in many states, such as Massachusetts, Colorado, and too many to list, and right now in Connecticut, they're talking about legislation to pass a law making it legal for recreational use, much like beer, wine, liquor, and things of this nature. Well, just because something's legal to use doesn't necessarily mean your employer will allow you or think it's acceptable for you to use it. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that. If you're 18 or 21 and you can buy it legally and you can use it legally in your own home and not operate a car, things of this nature, should you then be allowed to go to work, not under the influence, but, let's say you used marijuana on a Saturday evening and then you went to work on Monday morning and, the effects wore off and you're obviously not intoxicated from it. Should that be allowed? And the answer is it's up to the employer. For example, in the NFL, okay, and I know this is a little outside of the box thinking, the NFL is a professional sport, but they have a rule where you are not allowed to use marijuana, even though it's legal in several states. But they do test, and if you test positive, and even if you live in a state where it's legal, you can be suspended from your job and lose pay. So my question to you is, and I'm not telling you what to think, or there is no necessarily right answer, but it is something that I want you to think about. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that should be legal? The reason why I ask is, as an American, as a taxpayer, as a voter, these are issues that I want you to know about and take interest in, and do a little research and read about that, and then formulate your own opinions and thoughts on these kind of issues. Because these are the type of issues and values that you're going to be voting for people one way or another. And so it's really important to critically think about issues like this, understand them, read about them, and then come up with your own decision on that. All right, last question, number 15. What strategies might help a person who is trying to give up drugs, alcohol, or tobacco/vape? So these are addictive substances that I'm putting in here. You could fill in anything. It could even be somebody who's has a gambling problem. You know, gambling isn't something that we talk a lot about, and that's becoming more and more legal. Sports gambling used to be only legal in Nevada. Well, now it's eventually it will be legal in every state, and it is very addictive. It's one of the most difficult habits to quit, in fact. So how could you help somebody? What are some strategies that you know about? And that's where I want you to enter them below. And if you're not sure, this might be an opportunity for you to very quickly just do a quick internet search and look up some ways that you can seek out treatment, or somebody that you know and love can seek out treatment or help for a drug, alcohol, gambling, tobacco, or a vape problem. And when you answer your question here, I don't know if it's going to show you my answer. I sure hope it does. But basically, I came up with a bulleted list of all of the options that are out there for you to get help for yourself or for a loved one or a friend. But I might as well just say them out loud here in closing the video. Obviously there's your parents, there's trusted adults, there's school, staff, teachers, trusted adults. People at church can be trusted adults. Church personnel. There are also websites and 1-800 numbers that are very easy to find on your phone or on your tablet. There's your general practitioner, so your doctor, your family doctor, your pediatrician, even emergency rooms can help get you help. A psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a therapist. And then also there are groups both in person and online called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous. NA is what that's called. And there are literally hundreds of groups in our area here in Connecticut, Harford County, all over the place that you can. There are Zoom meetings, so you can join online and you can mute your screen, you can mute your camera, just like most of you guys do in your classes, which is fine. I understand that, and I also understand that in an AA meeting. You really don't want somebody to see you, but you want to listen to what the people have to say, and it has saved lives, and it has led people to a path of sobriety. So those are some things that I very quickly came up with that are answers for this question. But maybe you have some experience with some grandparents or parents or uncles or cousins that have been through these hardships and have made it out the other side. So maybe that can help shape your answer to write down on number 15. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. And like I said, just follow along, click the answers, and make sure you hit submit at the end. All right, we'll see you in the next video.